little background on what we're doing and why. Then Chief can maybe say a few words before we get started.
Okay.
But a few years ago, you all remember Dr. Lisa Wakes and Chief Dawson. They facilitated the threat assessment and crisis intervention team. And when she left, it kind of just went to the side. But when there was a crisis or something, something went on, then pretty much it would be Chief Dawson when he was there, myself, and maybe we'll grab a counselor here and there depending on the situation. If it's a DSP student, maybe grab a student from there. And now that Chief Goldberg is here, he and I work together, but we really needed to have a team. So as part of his departure, he and I came together and decided to go ahead and reinstate the team, and then also make sure the campus community knew the process when we have a situation, and then also talk about some of the things that possible threats. You want to say a few words before we get to the agenda?
Yeah, let me just, for those of you that don't know who I am, and just to tell you about my experience. And the person just stepped out there is Chief Scott Holland. He's going to be taking over Friday. So he's here just to pass the baton so I can share much information as possible before he takes over on Friday. Scott was the former chief of Sausalito Police Department for 5 years, and he did a stellar job there. He retired there, and now he's coming here. So anyway, I look at him as the next level. But I did 30 years. I did 30 years at Vacaville Police Department, and pretty much almost every position. And I did, the last stint was in administration, where I worked really closely with the city and different aspects of the city. And one of the things I dealt with was in threat assessment. When we had in the city, now we don't have students, but we had like employees throughout the city. If we have a termination or something takes place where we have an employee that may be disgruntled or something, what do we do? And they call upon the police department to oftentimes respond. So that's my experience, and also I did a stint, we rotate, lieutenants rotate, and I did a stint overseeing investigations and the street enforcement team, and actually they did threat assessments on fugitives, on baggage, and we went through that process as well. Determining, it's hard, it's hard to predict outcomes. The FBI gets it right 50% of the time. 50% of the time, they get it right. It's hard to have, provide data and information, and then to provide the data and information on the individual and history, and then decide what's going to happen in the future. But there's certain things we need to do, that's what we're here to talk about. Certain things we can do, certain things you need to look for, to avoid what I call inaction, what we call inaction. Inaction is detrimental to the well-being of yourself, others, and the school. So with that said, let's go forward with this.
All right. The topics will be types of crisis threats at SCC. Some of them will be some that we've already experienced. You all will tell us more, I'm sure. Active shooter. There'll be a video assisting someone in crisis intervention, threat assessment team goals and function. And then we'll have the team members, and then also any questions you may have. Because we have an hour, we may want to just go ahead and get through. And then if you can save your questions for the end. If you have a burning question, please go ahead and ask. Otherwise, we'll have some time at the end to answer some questions. We've had a few issues here in the last few years. Some of those crises or threats, we had a potential gunman on campus. I think a couple of them in the last probably 5 years, yeah? Student murder off campus. There were a couple football players, and there was a city councilman who was a student. He wasn't a student at the time, but very linked into the community. Students who are homeless, mental health issues, domestic violence. People have had loved ones died. Anything else that we've had here in the last, I don't know how many years, things that you all have experienced that would constitute a crisis or a threat?
There's fights.
Fights on campus?
Multiple people in the fight.
Mm-hmm. Multiple people?
And medical emergencies.
Medical emergencies? Any others? Okay.
Battery.
I'm sorry?
Battery.
Battery? Mm-hmm.
The health center was robbed.
What, the health center was robbed? Wait, how about that? Okay, health center robbed?
No, but Rob, somebody came in and
Somebody
threatened.
came in and stole our, we collect donations for vaccine, $15. Somebody came in and took it.
Okay, so everybody, I'm going to digress for 1 quick second. Everybody know the difference between robbery and burglary?
Yes.
Yes.
Who knows the difference?
Burglary is not 4 people involved.
robbery.
That's close, yeah. And there needs to be something else, right? Forced robbery, threats, fear. Needs to be fear, threats, force for robbery, right? So a lot of people call and they say, "I've just been robbed," but their car was broken into, and something was stolen, or their home was broken into, or something was taken from their presence. All right? There's what we call a grand theft person. It's taken off the person, but it's not a robbery, because robbery is somebody coming in, generally force or fear. So is this a burglary? They broke in, or came in and
The
stole?
health assistant was there and they took the box and took off.
Well, she was
I
holding
don't
it.
know where it was.
But anyway, the point is that's a theft, right? And that's an immediate call to the police department. Okay.
Okay. Just curious, how many Local 39 or CSA, raise your hand for Local 39 CSA. How many faculty are here? I think it's interesting just because, well, it could be schedules, but also the frontline folks tend to deal with a lot of issues that are, students upset about something, or you happen to be there when something goes on. So it's just interesting to see how many folks we have here from different groups. Okay, so active shooter, we'll start there with Chief Goldberg will take it here.
Before you activate it, what is probably key in any type of an active shooter, active situation, active violent, active, somebody out that's creating a threat in this environment? What is key to the decision of what you're going to do? Yes, anybody? No, key in making that decision. What is the piece of information that helps you make the right decision? Huh?
Calmness.
That's you want to be calm. Now I'm going to give it to you because of the interest of time. The location of the shooter in relationship to you. The location of the event in relationship to you. Just watch the video and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Turn the lights off.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what.
Yeah.
Down the fire extinguisher, sugar.
Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
All right. So key in this thing, and the truth, everything we do is to have a plan. And have a plan, not a minute or 30 seconds before it happens, but plan now. So in your workshops, in your areas that you work, or if you're faculty members, in your classroom, at the beginning of the semester, or even now if you haven't done it, take a time out of the class, take a time out with your co-workers and say, okay, if this were to happen, what would we do? Have in your mind what we do, and have assignments. Okay, you're going to be responsible in the classroom primarily. The classroom meeting, who wants to be assigned, if we have a situation like that, or we have a terrorist come in or something to that effect, who's going to be assigned to, taking them out the front door. You're grabbing something and find something to disarm them or strike at them. Have that already assigned. Who's going to be responsible for securing the front door? And because I hear this complaints all through campus, oh, our door doesn't lock. No, you barricade it. You move a chair, a desk, whatever, open the door so it makes it difficult for them to get in so you have time to strike. It really is, it's not complicated. It doesn't need a manual on your shelf. It just needs a conversation in class.
Most classroom doors will come out.
Yeah, that's why you put this, so he or she would have to go through it. The point is to do something to stall them at the door, right? So that is, and then obviously location, if it's the other side of campus and you're on this side, you're going that way. And tomorrow at the building coordinators meeting, we're giving out bullhorns. We just got them in today. So there'll be bullhorns to announce things. So there's one step towards safety. Eventually, I've talked to Vice President Negosa. We're going to work on either a siren system or an intercom system as well. Chief Baldwin's going to be taking the lead on that over the next several months as far as getting something like that installed too. So there are measures that will be taking place down the road that will help.
What about the panic buttons that I had asked about?
That's independent to your shop,
Okay.
and that needs to be worked at through facilities.
Okay.
But that's something that can be done as well. So, but the point is, in an active shooter scenario, any type of these scenarios, is it shouldn't automatically surprise you. You're surprised because we don't expect things like that to happen, and hopefully it'll never happen here. But if you have a plan, you're going to be able to respond to it as they did. all right, in that type of situation.
What I'm hearing is a plan is, are you talking about individual department plans, or is this an institutional plan?
No, these are, well, let's get to, these are classroom plan.
So with that said, in, like, for example, in building 100, we have lab, we have open kiosks, we have library. 1400 building, we have cafeteria, we have student area, we have bookstore.
Right.
400 building, we have open access, no classroom in sight. Many students, many employees in very open view.
Right. So if you have something like that happen there, the employees that are there are people that are, you know, that are there all the time, that are, shall we say, and I'm going to be careful with this term, but responsible, but there is a responsibility factor when we're employed here. You're right? So they should have, okay, if this were to happen here, what would I do?
Right.
And you have,
So with that should, there is nothing other than this right
but
here.
but every environment has its own parameters for response, correct? This provides you some thought process of how to attack that environment. So you get together with your staff, and if you need us, we'll come there and help. You know, maybe there's certain environments that Chief Vaughn or the officers can come to and actually give some input in what to do. It's not, there's never a perfect solution, but the point is if you don't do anything, if you don't talk about it and have some type of a plan, then nothing's done.
Like for example, I don't even know who my building coordinator is or what to do.
That is being worked on.
Cool.
Okay, so tomorrow in the meeting, we have our building coordinators finally assigned, okay? And they're now going to get some marching orders to go out and get the word out, and that's going to go out to college.
Not to keep monopolizing the time, but I would hope that the building coordinators are coordinators that are, one, easy access, and that are on campus the bulk of their
That's the purpose of
their
it.
job duties.
Absolutely, I hope so. If not,
You know, let's say for example, a dean is in a lot of meetings. A dean typically is in more in the back of a building versus
out front.
out front.
The best we can do is what we're trying. We'll see what we're
I think
going
George just took me off of the committee. I'm okay with that.
Let me share one
So,
other thing.
these
From the
are-
police
these
standpoint,
are concerns.
this is something.
They're legitimate, no question.
This is something that's happening from the police department, so you'll know. We're about ready to deploy our, what they call AR-15. Everybody know what an AR-15 is, if I say that? It's a rifle, all right? It's like all the assault rifles. The police departments have them so that they're well equipped to respond to something like this. Our officers are now trained. We have just a few more to go through training. The majority are trained now in shooting them. They're very accurate. They're very competent with them. And they've been trained both in classroom and at the range. And the cars are now, we have one car ready to install it, and the other car is going to be hopefully hooked on tonight. So this will actually, you'll see them in the car, I'm letting you know, and they're secured at night, so that no one's going to be able to get access to them but the police officers. But it's just one more thing so you know that we're prepared. Okay, and our officers, in my direction, I'm sure it'll stay the same. If we ever have an event like that, our officers' responsibility is not to set up a command post. Our officers' responsibility is to go to wherever that shooter is or wherever the event is and do whatever they can to address it. Okay, that's their job. I said, hey, that's what you get paid the big bucks for. You know, that's the time when the badge and all the honor and everything comes to play. You know, your job is to put your life on the line for others, right then, right now. You don't hesitate, you go there and you deal with it. Okay? And that's what police officers are supposed to do. Okay.
Was there another question?
The plan for the building renovations, are these safety measures considered on the plan?
Oh, absolutely. For the intercom systems and everything else you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's what's probably generating this effort right now to get these intercom systems put in. I'm confident that is. So, well, you know, I mean, that's.
Yeah, Jeff will know. Well, Jeff, want to answer that question?
It's been discussed and we haven't come to final decision because all these extras are in the field, so we still having to play.
I went out the other night and looked at lighting in the parking lots and everything. We gave some recommendations to facilities on that too. So we're looking at lighting. We're looking at safety, campus safety. It's constant. Is it going to be done like this? No. You know, we want to do it responsibly and fiscally, you know, in a responsible way there as well.
Any other questions? Okay. So basically, the difference is the student who's in crisis or the employee's in crisis, we're trying to get them to the services for help. And then for the threat, there may be a situation. Does anyone want to give an example of a potential threat where The threat assessment team would, I see Judy laughing, so she may have a few of them. Where the threat assessment team would come together and talk about, we'll assess a potential threat. Any situations that we've encountered in the past where the threat assessment team was involved. I can think of a couple, but I'll give you a second or two to see if you can think of any. Second or two, okay. The one I can remember is there was a student. Did you have? Yeah, go ahead.
We just recently had a report of a student threatening suicide in class. I referred to.
Okay, and that would be the crisis team would come together and maybe come together depending on what the situation is. Sometimes the crises are huge situations where the team will come together and discuss them. If it's a threat, for example, there's a student who wrote an essay, and on that essay he wrote about, or she wrote about shooting up the school, or something of that nature. The team will come together and discuss the student and see if there's any other regular, or if there's any other common information out there to assess the level of threat. For example, we may bring in the DSP counselor. DSP counselor might say, oh yes, I've worked with this student, and here's some additional information that you might want to know. Or maybe Chief Goldberg does a background on the student, and the student has priors using guns. So there's an assessment done to determine what level of action or response we need to have. So that's kind of you want to add to that? Or
Well, it can be the other thing that there's no indication of any past history. So, I mean, it allows us to evaluate, like I said, the level of response, the appropriate response. Again, understanding that there's a lot of subjectivity to it because we're trying to predict the future. And it's difficult at best, but it's still, we are doing something versus nothing.
And a lot of times when we do that research, it's interesting what we come up with by using social media and just the few I've been involved with. And it kind of increases the level of threat depending on what we find at times. So anyway, when you encounter someone who is in a crisis, encourage the person to speak with the counselor. If you call this number, the counseling office, 4577, we get a special ring. So don't call it if you are trying to make an appointment for a friend, but call it if there's a crisis. It'll ring, and it's a distinct ring. Everyone in the office will go to that phone and answer it. When we answer it, please start with there's a student in crisis. Because sometimes we have people call and they'll say, we have a student who needs an appointment. And we're like, well, we're going to have appointments for a week or 2 weeks. So please start with there's a student in crisis because we respond differently. We will find a counselor for that student immediately. We'll cancel appointments. We'll do whatever it takes for the student to be seen. And that's very important because I've actually had to call back times where I learned later on that there was a student in crisis where they were contemplating suicide, or they were in an abusive relationship and they were concerned. And anytime there's danger, call Chief Goldberg, call the police department on campus. If it's an emergency at that moment, 911.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And also, go ahead. I'll just finish the last point right here. If you can, escort the student over to counseling after calling or before calling. Never let the student go by themselves if they're in a crisis. And sometimes they don't show up, and we want to help them. We want to give them all the services that we have and make sure that they're okay. And at times it will mean calling, which we do more than I'd like, when we have to call Chief Goldberg and do 5150 because a student is contemplating suicide. And I'd hate for a student to leave, get in their car, and go wherever, and then never make it back, and we didn't connect the students to the proper services.
Just a couple things quickly. First of all, if you're in dialogue with a student and some type of conversation where the student says something effective, you better watch your back. All right? And I don't know if you've heard that expression or something similar before. What I'd like you to do, and let me put the caveat out there, what I'd like you to do, one, if you feel comfortable doing it and you're not alone with the person or they're not overly aggressive when they say that. So those three factors have to take place. If the person just said, you better watch your back, like that, then what'd you do? What do you think is a good response to that?
What do you mean? What is that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do it in a non-threatening way when you say that. Don't go, what do you mean by that? Then the fight's on, right? You say, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that? in an inquisitive way, in a non-threatening, soft way, and let them respond. Listen, don't try to fill the air like I'm doing right now. Let them respond. And they may say, I'll catch you, I'll find you outside, I'll find you something, you pay for this.
That's a threat.
We need that.
Yes.
Okay, now you got a significant threat. Okay? The other way we're going to look into it, but it helps us.
Tremendously, and thank you for bringing that up, because sometimes there's that gray area, and the gray area doesn't really allow us to, I don't get to exercise the student conduct code, I don't get to apply it, because it's gray, and so, and Chief Goldberg it's not against the law to say something like, watch your back, or things like that. I see two hands, and I think I'm anticipating one of the questions. This is going to be a little bit different at the centers, obviously. And so, follow as much as possible. If we have a counselor at the centers, you just follow the same process. If we don't, please call the counseling office for the centers, and we'll try to get someone over there. Even if we talk to the student via phone and have a staff person with the student at the time at the center.
Chief, when you say that, you better watch your back, we as employees here should not get into a comfortable position of just because they're 3 foot nothing, doesn't mean they can't do you harm.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
you have to assess, let them know to assess the fact that they can hurt you regardless of their size.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
don't have to be a fullback.
I agree. You know what? You're going to help with my argument here, or not argument, but I'm going to let you know what our policy is from a police standpoint in dealing with somebody, because this was questioned, and I think I should share with all of you. If somebody has suicide ideation, okay, suicide, the threats of suicide, or they want to commit suicide, I'm going to digress for a second. It's nice to know if you can ask, if you don't feel comfortable, don't go there. But if they suggest they have a plan, that's a lot more serious, right? That raises the bar. They already got a plan now, not just, oh man, I wish I was dead. Or, I got a gun at home, I got bullets. I'm gonna do it tonight. I am going to do it. I am tired. Okay? I mean, that's a little different. I got a plan, I got a weapon, I got bullets, I'm gonna do it. So if we have that, if we have a suicidal person that has a weapon, or something like that, or it's cut, we had one the other day that had already started cutting themselves. All right? We're taking them to someone on a crisis unit. There's no negotiating. Okay? We're not letting them drive themselves. I'm sorry, but I don't want to see that person get hurt. And it's, when I see something like that, or when they start talking guns, that's red flags, right? So it doesn't matter how big they are. They can hurt themselves or somebody else. And a lot of times they try, not a lot, but it happens, where they try to get a police officer to suicide by a police officer to commit finish the death. So understand that we will handcuff them, and we transport, when we take them to crisis, we handcuff them. And it's not because we're trying to be mean or anything, it's we're trying to make sure that they don't have all of a sudden act out of their own fear and either try to hurt themselves or somebody else. So it's for their safety and ours. So please be understanding and tolerant of that. We are gentle with them, and you can ask them, we treat them with incredible respect. We care. We're very passionate people in this organization. We care, but we have a policy we will hang. Okay? Does everybody understand that?
But I gotta say that Chief Goldberg and the rest of the officers have been great about it. They don't parade them through the offices and all that kind of stuff. It's very, it's done a way to kind of not make the student feel bad about their decision to let us know. And also, you all hopefully don't feel bad about letting us know when something like that happens, because when we don't know, if someone was to go home and kill themselves, it's a whole lot worse than being handcuffed. So, the reason why the crisis intervention team was formed was because there were a lot of crises going on at the time, and the California Community College system developed the crisis intervention team, and then it kind of morphed into something a little different. But at the time, the concerns were there were a lot of students with mental health issues and physical disabilities that didn't allow them to necessarily express themselves what the problem is. And they were found that some of the officers were having a challenging time, the campus officers, with those students. So the goal was to increase their awareness of that. I have to say that I've been completely impressed with Chief Goldberg and some of the new officers. Our current officers that have been here for a while, they're wonderful as well. But I have to just recognize their work, Chief Goldberg and some of the new officers. They've been fabulous to work with because I end up working with them quite a bit. And they're exceptional, very professional, and a pleasure to work with. The goals of the team is to have a better understanding of mental health illnesses and medications, learn more about community services, preventative measures when possible, connect people with services both on and off campus. I will send out an email probably this week. It'll be this week. I usually send out every semester about what to do when there's a student in crisis. And there'll be resource manuals attached to that email. So please copy that on your desktop and have it as a resource for students if needed. We also want to have a clearinghouse for the regulars, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of times we're all we have our hands in, whether it's something going on at the centers. We're doing a good job of communicating, but sometimes there's things going on at the centers, there's things going on in financial aid, Chief Goldberg, counseling, maybe in a class here or a class there, and we get together and we talk about it. We find out there's a pretty serious case here that we have to address. So it ends up serving as a clearinghouse. And it's a central location to send potential crisis and threats. The team consists of, currently, and most of these folks were on the last team, and we've recruited a few more. Candace Rowe, Christy, and they all have reasons because of their service, their position on campus, maybe their background. Candace Rowe, DSP counselor, Christy Speck, who works in child development, Noel Robinson, nurse, Stephen Springer, who's a general counselor, was a DSP counselor, Kathleen Callison, administrative assistant for counseling and special services. She's here to help me. Mary Ann Flatland, veterans counselor, general counselor, a licensed therapist. Judy Nash. Judy, did you know you were going to be on this list? I did invite you to the meeting tonight when we talked about it. I don't think you responded though yet, but you're on here. So Judy may be with us. We don't know yet. Judy has a lot of involvement. She works in DSPS, and given that she works in that area, we find a lot of students who are going through mental health issues. A lot of times they've already worked with DSP or they need to, and she'll help us link that. And then Chief Goldberg and myself, there's a few other people that have been nominated, and we'll be contacting them soon.
No, I think Scott will be obviously replacing me.
Yes.
So, and he brings a lot of knowledge, so. I mean, the important thing is that this group, a collective group of folks, is to have this, it is a brainstorming. You take a look at everything, and you know, everybody has a piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And you put that puzzle together, and you have the best opportunity to have a good resolution, good action plan. And key to that is bringing the right people together. I think you have.
Yeah, a couple recommendations were was Amy Utt, because she works in veterans also. Jocelyn Mouton, CalWorks, because of she's a licensed social worker. And I don't know if there were maybe a couple other people. So if you feel that you want to be on this committee, please see me, or if you'd like to recommend someone to be on the committee. We only meet when we have to, or if it's for training. So there's not many meetings. Hopefully things are going well on campus. There's no. Questions, and I purposefully left a lot of time because usually this starts a lot of conversation. Don't know what's going to happen this time, but there's about 20 minutes where we can have a good conversation.
Yeah, before we start the questions, I have a handout, fresh off the press, and I brought it here like this because I want you to have an opportunity to critique it. So take a look at it. I have enough. Here. And so it's two-sided, and this will be produced in color, nice, by graphic design. They're going to produce that for us. We'll have it done in about a week. We'll get that out.
Maybe you just say hi.
I'm going to do my copy, and then you guys can do edits on it.
Any questions? April.
Do you still have to dial 9 first before you dial 911 like before?
What now?
You dial 9 first?
For 911?
You have to dial 9?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's going to email this out also.
So This is a document, I gave some training on dealing with a difficult customer. There's a lot of folks here are staff, but everybody deals with customers, right? So this is just some insight into some strategies that have worked for us in the past. If you're interested in this, if not, pass it on. This is, I don't know if I have enough.
Where's room 226 in building 400?
Did I mess up on something already? Huh?
Where's room 226 in building 400?
Oh, I screwed up. That's bad.
We did that so she could feel
It's
used.
407, but Chief Goldberg will send it to me, and I'll make the correction, and I'll put it as part of the email I send out, as far as the steps you follow when there is a crisis. So I'll make that correction, or he'll make it, and then the send it to me, and it'll be one of the attachments on the email I send out, probably on Wednesday or Thursday.
One of the, any other questions on this? Go ahead.
This isn't on that handout, so this is the general question.
Okay.
There's been quite a few times where, just walking through campus to grab a cup of coffee, or near my area, I work in the 100 building, where there's either been fights, and they, haven't gotten too crazy, but they've gotten close, and I was able to kind of just go out before, like, a lot of blows were thrown, and kind of, try to send one person one way, one person another way. But in particular, just in our area where we work in the lab, was kind of an open area, and we had a situation that almost came to some sort of physical blows, or whatever you want to call it. And what becomes our responsibility in that situation, and also what kind of action is considered appropriate? If somebody that I'm working with is physically assaulted, or somebody physically assaults another student, obviously someone needs to call 911, but in the meantime, what is it that, I know you kind of use the term responsible loosely in that, but what should we do, and also what are we protected to be able to
Well,
do?
first of all, how big was the guy? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so,
No, you mean answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not responsible to break up fights. That's why the police are here. Although there are times, I'm sure, where some of us will feel comfortable in trying to de-escalate a situation.
right.
Maybe use verbal commands.
Right, and it's gotten that situation where it's been that way before, but like this one particular instance where it happened with us, where an employee was pretty close to being physically assaulted. If something like that does happen, are we within our rights to go and restrain somebody? I mean, are we allowed to physically run into them, hit them? I mean, what do we do? And also, like, because it's like a valid question. What
Sounds like you
happens?
want to do something.
No, but you get what I'm saying? Like, right now, if something happened, would I be protected? Would I lose my job? What would happen, and what's considered to be the appropriate response?
I think the appropriate response for us on a question like that is you need to call the situation. Call the police department, be a good witness. Okay, if somebody's obviously getting pummeled or something, there's a good Samaritan role.
Right.
You get involved. But if there's just two guys and they're going to be fighting, or two gals, whatever they're going to be fighting, it's not sexist, two guys. It could be two gals, right? To anything. Guy, gal. But actually, and you got to make some decisions on your own.
Right.
But you could actually, call, tell them the police are en route.
Right.
That'll stop it. But you get involved, you end up getting hurt. You end up, maybe it goes south, it goes the way you don't plan. You don't know these individuals, right?
Sure, but I'm saying in situations where
I would
getting
be a good
involved
witness.
is.
Be a good witness, okay?
Yes, definitely.
Unless you see somebody being victimized, then I hope anybody would help. All right, that makes sense. You agree?
Absolutely. Number one, your safety is most important. You're not paid to break up fights, but we do it sometimes.
Right, I mean, we've
It's
seen
just-
some pretty
yeah.
bad stuff. I mean, there's a fight, and then there's, a group of dudes kicking someone on the ground.
Yeah,
And there's been times where, people have had to intervene. I'm just
You're not
questioning-
expected to. It's not part of your job.
Police are around.
Right.
Hey, police are around.
The verbal commands, very, loud. But like I said, most often we do get involved, but we're probably putting ourselves at risk. But we are by doing that, not just physically, but maybe in a lawsuit. I don't know. Or,
Yeah, that's the question you gotta have, right?
Or say you get injured.
You're an employee representing us.
Yeah.
Right. Police call us. Be careful.
One of the concerns in situations like this is staff that may feel that they can handle this. They can deal with the student, they talk to the student. And if it escalates, then they put themselves at risk. At what point are you, these directions, are you receive the information that, you're not equipped, or you don't think you're equipped to do this, rely on those that are trained. Because if I have a student in my face screaming they would kill B, whatever, I'm not gonna try to talk them down.
Which team?
But some people.
That's too long, man, that's a long list.
There are people who think that they can handle it on their own, and that's just action.
No, it's not. None of us should try to handle it on our own. We need to call professionals 100% of the time.
You know, a good example that, you know, police officers responding to a major incident, major crime, major, you know, event. The first responders are there to secure the scene. You know, get everything, you know, they call it grabbing hold of time, secure it, stop things from continuing, right? And then call in the experts. So it's the same thing when you're dealing with an employee, student, whoever you're dealing with, that has a problem. You want to, okay, you know, freeze this moment, I'm gonna get information I can get, and I'm gonna get it to the people that are the subject matter experts. And if we all walk into these things with that type of mindset, we're going to rely on these resources that are available to us. That's why the pamphlet, that's why this presentation. The resources there. However, it helps those resources if you, at the onset, acquire some of the information that gets them to the right resource. And gets them to the, you know, you can figure out how urgent this situation is. You know, is this person just, you know, failing classes and detached, and maybe it just needs to start a SARS. SARS report. Everybody knows what SARS is, right?
SARS alert.
Is everybody here? Are there not faculty only or anybody?
Faculty have it on their roster, so they use faculty. So I don't know if the faculty folks here are aware of SARS alert or teaching classes anywhere. It'll be under My Solano.
So that's the, you know, opportunity to communicate that level of response versus the person that, you know, is active and overt about what they're doing.
A while back, we had placed on the website the put your cell phone number in and we'll get you.
Alert you.
That's the next step here.
Everybody should sign up for Alert You. Absolutely.
It hasn't been utilized, as far as I know, even with the gun response that we have not too long.
It needs to be, that is important.
Or, you know, any of the earthquake responses, you know, we kind of get, earthquake responses, we kind of get a little enamored, but.
And there, understand this, that there are things that you will be alerted on and things that you will not be, because we don't need panic. We don't need widespread panic on an event that is localized and handled right then. We're not going to notify everybody about those things. You know, we may have it in our, you know, in our log, in our entry, but we don't want to automatically go to alert you with everything that, you know, unless it's going to
It was
impact.
supposed to be a lockdown situation, and 99% of the personnel here on campus, on the main campus where it was happening, hadn't heard about it.
Yeah, we understand. That's what prompted some of the discussion about this and how to do it better. So we are working on that.
Are the police logs posted anywhere that we can review them, just so after the fact we'll know what went on?
Right now, what we do, what we've implemented is there's a log on the front counter of the police department. Anybody can come in and take a look. That's available for you anytime. Okay, that, you know, we're open and available. It will be. I'm sure Chief Paulin already asked that question. How come this isn't available on the website? It will be on the website. Okay, coming up, you're going to see a lot more information on our website once the website management is provided to our staff.
Great. So, and I just say that because oftentimes we get hearsay information from students and what have you, and I like to go by the facts so that after the fact, you know, I can tell what really happened according to the log as to what happened, and that helps to kind of dispel future things after the incident is gone.
How many full-time, full-certified officers do we have at any one time on the campus? What is the goal? How many do you want to have, and when will that be implemented?
Okay, right now we have 8 officers employed. Okay, there are 6 that are what we call annuitants or part-time officers, and there are 2 full-time. And we just went through applications this morning, and we're looking to hire 2 more, possibly more, but 2 right now, so for a total of 4 full-time officers, and a minimum of 6 part-time. We're hoping to get a couple more of those too. The goal is to have 2 officers on duty on this campus when people are here.
And the center.
Okay, and the centers to have 1 in Vallejo and 1 as we can, and back a little bit. But when the officer's not available, we'll have a community service officer. We just hired 2 more community service officers, so we'll have 4 of those as well.
Okay, they don't carry weapons.
They don't carry weapons, but they have a presence, and they do provide support. They, you know, most agencies are going to hire community service officers to take what we call cold crime reports, and it relieves the officers from some of that, so they're available for patrol work. So we're trying to increase, not trying, we are increasing the presence in the community here, and the goal is always to provide a safe environment for the educational, for you, and for the students attending here, for this educational community.
So at the layout will be 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 8 to 5 or 2 to 10? What is the plan if you only have one person there?
The plan is actually for the 410. And Chief Ballin, you know, I'm careful here, that's why I'm kind of guarded as I say this, because I'm finished Thursday, and he can change this Friday. So we've talked, but my thought was to put 4 10-hour shifts to get the optimum from the officer coverage at Vallejo, and it'd be Monday through Thursday. And we will set the hours based on discussion from the experience. So I already sent, Joe went over there for a few days to do an assessment over there to see when there's the greatest amount of activity. So I mean, this is how we're starting. We want to expand. That's our goal, to expand. And but we need to get our roots down first, and really do an assessment of everything that's going on out there. So we've had some interesting cases over the last couple of weeks. So really proud of the officers. They've done really good work.
So what's happening to Chief Over? He's vanishing on Thursday?
Yeah.
That's it, you're done?
I'm done. I'm only allowed to work 960 hours based on because when I first retired, this is a PERS organization. And if I work Friday, I lose my retirement. I'm not going to do that.
Well, it's nice meeting you.
But you know, I leave you in incredible hands. I mean, he was my mentor most of my career. So you will gain at my departure here. Somebody that.
The same rules apply for him, 960 hours that he's done?
Yeah. It's a little different. It's a little different. It overlaps. Anyway, so one other thing I think is important that we haven't really discussed too much, and that is confidentiality in this. There is, when somebody shares things with you, you have an obligation if there's any threats or they're, you know, an imminent harm for themselves, and you should always rely on the resources. But at the same time, we don't go broadcasting. You know, you go to the resources, you talk to Dr. Vines, you talk to the counseling, but we don't start telling everybody about a certain individual. And you know, there's certain things that you can keep in that venue of counseling that you should keep, not can, but you should keep, and not spread it. And I don't think anybody here would, but we're a community and we're a family here. I've come to realize that. But there's certain things we need to respect. You agree? You know exactly what I'm talking about. So understand that, because we're asking you to ask questions and to get to know the students. Let me digress and go to where I'm trying to take us. These incidents that have happened throughout our nation, you guys follow it afterwards in the news. And there seems to be this proclivity, this tendency for the individual that was responsible to have had contact in the past with people that come forward. You know, I saw that individual. I saw Jim. You know, I'm a counselor. And I saw Jim. Yeah, he did that kind of weird. Or a teacher or a faculty staff member said, yeah, he was kind of weird. Or the neighbors go, yeah, he was distant. Yeah. You know, there are early signs. There seems to be always early signs. But then as soon as that person says something like that, they say, oh, but it wasn't that bad. Because I don't want to be sued or something. Oh, no. I misspoke, you know. But my point is this. There's almost always early signs of this acting out behavior, of this, and the violence, and even the suicide. There's early signs. Be aware. Be in tune. Be in touch with your colleagues, with your students, and get to know them so you know when things are not right. And then be responsive. Don't just see it and talk about it. Do something about it. Does that make sense? I'm preaching to the choir here. I think you all would tell me the same thing. Ed, when you see crime, do something about it. You know? So I understand that. But it's important that we have that mindset when we walk into class, when we walk into our workshops, that we're aware of people. And I say we're a family. Let's take care of each other. All right? Let's help each other as much as we can. I want to say this, and Mike, and you know, my March here, I really enjoyed my time here. I have learned a lot about this college and about you, and this is a wonderful group of people. Don't ever take for granted what you have here. You know, you have a good group of people working here that care, that are fun to work with. I've enjoyed my time. I'm going to miss you.
We're going to miss you. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
If an active shooter came into that door right now, what should we be doing?
Run away from him.
He does. I just went to the range 2 weeks ago. They only get 1 foot.
Yes, and
I got my bullet in my pocket.
Tomorrow's presentation will be the same, just different questions, I'm sure. So someone asked, well, is it a 2-day workshop? It's only one. We just offer it at a different time for people, a different day. If there are any other questions, thank you very much.
Maybe we should meet our predecessor here.
A few words?
Yeah, that's good.
Since he's going to be stepping up, you know, we know who to avoid.
Thank you.
I've worked with Ed for 30+ years. I've moved around a little bit. Started in Sacramento, went up to Grass Valley, came down to Vacaville, worked at Vacaville PD for 22 years, came up through the ranks. Pretty much mirrored Ed's career. I was on the SWAT team for 17 years as a sergeant, commander, officer. I've done just about every assignment similar to Ed throughout the department, including youth services, family crimes, investigations as an officer, sergeant, and commander. And after I became a commander there, I wanted to become a chief somewhere, and Sausalito was a good fit. Went over there for nearly 6 years and retired, but still have a lot of gas in the tank to do something. And talking to Ed about this opportunity here, I was on the last 3 interview panels for the police officers, and I've been over here a half a dozen times, and really look forward to the opportunity to help out and keep the good work that Ed has started going. There's still a lot to do here to get it to where it needs to be, as you know, and where we want it to be, as far as the feeling of safety, security, and a good feeling of interaction and positive interaction with the police department. I think community relations is real similar to campus relations with police. Is key. If the officers aren't talking to you and the students, we're not getting the information we need to make sure you're safe, and they don't feel like that we're approachable. And so we want to make sure that those barriers are very low, if non-existent, and that we do continue that feeling that we're all in this together to help each other and do our part for safety. So again, my name is Scott Pollock. I officially started as chief on Friday, and just want to continue all the great work that's done.
He's left out an important part. He's a Solana Community College alumni.
All right. Judy, I think had a question. Oh, you can leave if you want. I think Judy.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
No, did you please? We're no hurry.
Okay.
I'm retired.
Well, I want to thank you anyway. You know, I do around out the tram, and I'm always running into people out there fussing and doing their thing. And he personally came up and said, call me directly if you're out here on this tram and you see a argument.